The bloodline connecting the world's most legendary assault rifles did not begin in a pristine design bureau. History forged it in mud and rubble, where holding a 5-round weapon guaranteed an early grave. Why did an infantryman with a rifle shooting a kilometer away find himself defenseless in urban combat? The reality of modern war shattered old illusions. The answer lay in the brutal math of time and distance. A soldier crouches in the choking brick dust of a ruined Stalingrad apartment block. He pulls the trigger. The deafening roar of the heavy 8x57mm Mauser cartridge shakes the cramped room. Muzzle flash blinds him. He frantically rips the bolt back. He ejects the smoking brass. He shoves another round into the chamber, but time runs out. The Soviet defender floods the corridor with a continuous storm of fire from a 71-round submachine gun drum. The German falls. A weapon built for open fields became a coffin in a narrow stairwell. The army marched into this meat grinder, carrying a masterpiece of the past. The 5-round bolt-action rifle offered lethal precision. Its iron sights allowed an effective range of over 1,000 meters. But in city ruins, the average engagement distance collapsed. Men fought and died at less than 50 meters, making those long-range sights absolutely pointless. Combat statistics exposed a fatal gap. The vast majority of firefights occurred well under 300 yards, rendering full-power rifles unnecessarily destructive and dangerously slow. Conversely, pistol-caliber submachine guns shredded targets up close, but their lightweight bullets lost all lethal momentum beyond 50 yards. The infantry bled out in this tactical void. They desperately needed a medium cartridge. They needed high-capacity magazines. They needed volume of fire. The tragedy was that someone had already predicted this slaughter. Decades earlier, in 1918, the horrors of trench warfare had already exposed this exact vulnerability. A visionary German officer named Hauptmann Pitterit analyzed the battlefield and wrote a detailed tactical report. He argued that standard military rifles wasted immense energy firing massively powerful rounds far beyond practical distances. He explicitly demanded a shorter-range cartridge paired with a rapid-firing weapon to keep assault troops alive. The high command of the Reich locked his report inside a dusty filing cabinet. While the visionary warning rotted in an archive, the Reich marched millions into the meat grinder holding relics. Newsreels painted a beautiful lie. Posters showcased elite stormtroopers. They swept through cities with sleek automatic weapons. How many MP-40 submachine guns actually reached the front lines? The Ministry of Propaganda engineered a flawless cinematic illusion. In reality, factories delivered them in scarce batches of a few thousand. Fresh recruits sat in cinemas. They watched invincible veterans fire the MP-40, the FG-42 paratroop rifle, or the semi-automatic Gewehr 43. They expected a high-tech war. Then they arrived at the supply depots. A quartermaster handed them a Kar 98, wood and steel, a manual bolt. The psychological blow hit before the first shot. Soldiers realized their nightmare. They would face a mechanized slaughterhouse with 5 slow bullets. Advanced firearms existed, but the logistical behemoth possessed a brutal momentum. The military machine physically could not abandon its core infrastructure. Infantry squads survived solely on the MG-34 and MG-42 machine guns. These beasts delivered a terrifying storm of lead. They compensated for the slow rifles, but they demanded static crews. A lone soldier could not clear a ruined basement wielding a massive crew-served weapon. He desperately needed personal close-range firepower. Generals ignored the daily street slaughter. German assembly lines relentlessly stamped out 14 million obsolete bolt-action rifles. To give those 14 million men a fighting chance in the mud, engineers had to do the unthinkable. In 1938, they decided to amputate the sacred rifle cartridge of the Reich. The standard brass casing measured 57 millimeters, too long, too powerful. Its brutal recoil ripped sights off target during close-quarters panic. The solution was pure, desperate arithmetic. Engineers physically chopped the case down to 33 millimeters, less powder, less brass, less recoil. This physical transformation completely changed infantry logistics. By reducing the powder charge and bullet weight, a soldier could pack nearly double the ammunition into his webbing without carrying an extra ounce. Twice the bullets meant twice the lifespan during a trench assault. By 1941, the military officially adopted the modification. They named it the 7.92 by 33 Kurtz. Kurtz meant short. The new bullet left the barrel at 700 meters per second, slower than a traditional rifle round, far deadlier than a pistol caliber. For the first time, a frightened conscript could fire on full automatic from the shoulder and actually control his weapon. The future rifle mattered less than this new geometry. Ballistic tests confirmed the compromise worked. The shortened cartridge retained a flat trajectory and lethal energy out to exactly 500 meters. This radical shortened ammunition demanded a completely new host. Master gunsmith Hugo Schmeisser answered the call. The concept received a blunt name: Maschinenkarabiner, machine carbine. How do you mass-produce a weapon that the Führer himself hates? You bypass the system. Adolf Hitler despised the intermediate cartridge concept. He stubbornly demanded traditional long-range rifles. Bureaucracy immediately denied the project urgency. The design was practically dead on arrival, but the engineers kept fighting. They knew the trenches needed volume, not prestige. By 1942, two rival firms delivered their defiance in physical form: the MKB-42W and Schmeisser's own MKB-42H. Both weapons abandoned pre-war perfection. The assembly lines discarded traditional forging. Cold presses crushed sheet metal into shape. The dull clank of these stamped receivers replaced the refined ringing of milled steel. It looked crude. Rough wooden stocks and raw welds stood out as absolute markers of a bleeding war economy. But this cheap stamped steel cut manufacturing time from dozens of hours down to mere fractions. A critical victory for an exhausted nation fighting on multiple fronts. A heavy 30-round detachable box magazine slammed into the receiver with a sharp click. The gun breathed. The ultimate test awaited in the bloodiest theater of the war. In the winter of 1942, factory workers nailed shut the heavy wooden crates. Supply trains carried the first secret batches of prototypes straight into the freezing mud of the Eastern Front. In 1943, Adolf Hitler personally signed the death warrant for a weapon that could rewrite the war. He demanded the old Mauser, a concept born in 1898. The dictator refused to acknowledge the new reality of combat. He authorized only full-power rounds and the standard MP-40. Everything else faced an absolute ban. How do you save a design when the Führer himself orders its destruction? The gunsmiths of the Reich committed official treason. Hitler expected absolute obedience. The project dismantled, the blueprints burned. Instead, the Ordnance Department executed a massive bureaucratic lie. They forged the paperwork. They buried the revolutionary rifle under a fake index. They named it the MP-43. On paper, it looked like just another submachine gun. In reality, it was a completely new breed of firepower. The engineers played a deadly game. They bypassed Berlin. They sent the weapon straight to the trenches. The deception held perfectly, until a returning general made a fatal slip. He stood before Hitler and begged for more of the new miracle rifles. The secret shattered. Hitler demanded an immediate demonstration. He arrived at the testing grounds furious. He took the prototype. He aimed. He pulled the trigger. The heavy echo of the unknown caliber tore through the silence of the firing range. Brass casings hit the dirt. The skepticism vanished instantly. The dictator's anger melted into absolute delight. He lowered the smoking barrel. The weapon had saved its creators. Coupled with glowing frontline reports, Hitler reversed his ban on the spot. But a revolutionary weapon needed a terrifying identity. He wanted a title dripping with morale-boosting propaganda. He crossed out the fake index. In 1944, the Führer officially christened the assault rifle as the Sturmgewehr, stamping the STG-44 into military history. While Berlin bureaucrats juggled fake paperwork, the Eastern Front wrote the true verdict in blood. Select platoons unwrapped the contraband shipments right in the trenches. Two rivals, Model H. The infantrymen did not care about factory politics. They cared about surviving the slaughter. In the miserable cold, Model H proved its absolute dominance. It was ruthless. It was reliable. For the first time, exhausted soldiers could flip a switch, choosing between a devastating full-auto storm and precise single shots. The lethal range shattered the limits of standard submachine guns, but the battlefield demanded one final evolution. The frontline survivors sent a strict ultimatum back to the engineers, demanding a fully closed bolt firing system. Amidst the black soot and freezing mud of the Russian steppes, an open mechanism invited dirt. A jammed gun meant a dead soldier. A closed bolt sealed the elements out, keeping the internal steel pristine. The men dying in the dirt became the true architects of the rifle. Engineers abandoned the corporate rivalry, ripping the best traits from both prototypes to forge a single, lethal hybrid. They disguised the ultimate assault weapon as a submachine gun, stamping it as the MP-43. The mass assembly lines officially ignited in 1943. Baptized with the official name STG-44, the rifle immediately faced a new enemy: total resource starvation. The year was 1944. How do you arm an army when your factories lie in ruins? The answer was found in cheap sheet metal stamping. Allied bomber fleets were systematically grinding the industrial heart of the Ruhr Valley to dust. High-grade steel was vanishing. Skilled labor was dead or drafted. But the new weapon bypassed the slow, complex machining of the past. The dull, rhythmic thud of heavy stamping presses drowned out the endless wailing of air raid sirens. Desperate workers smashed raw steel sheets into rifle receivers. This crude manufacturing method became the collapsing empire's last economic lifeline. It allowed the regime to blindly arm whole divisions while their own cities burned to the ground. The math of survival was absolute. For the exact same time and effort needed to carve out one old KR-98, assembly line spat out 3 to 4 new STG-44s. The stamped beast weighed just over 5 kilograms. A curved steel magazine held 30 rounds. The cyclic rate was intentionally choked down to a moderate 500 to 600 rounds per minute. It kept the recoil perfectly controllable. It kept the frantic shooter lethal. The entire frame prioritized raw combat ergonomics over tradition. The charging handle protruded stubbornly from the left side of the receiver. In the chaotic mud of a firefight, a soldier's left hand violently racked the bolt to clear a jam. His right hand maintained a death grip on the pistol grip. His index finger never left the trigger. Engineers initially dreamed of a modular weapon. Early prototypes featured intricate mounts for sniper optics and heavy grenade launchers. But time was a luxury the regime no longer possessed. Every single optical rail and bayonet lug was permanently erased from the blueprints, just to shave hours off the assembly process. But 30 rounds in a magazine offered no salvation when the war collapsed into an urban meat grinder. Every ruined doorway harbored death. Casualties skyrocketed. Infantrymen bled out in the rubble, desperate for any chance to fire without exposing their skulls to snipers. Survival meant bending the rules of reality. German engineers answered the slaughter with the Krumlauf, a curved barrel extension. The concept was born from pure, terrified necessity. Fire around blind corners. Shoot from behind barricades. Stay alive. They forged heavy steel tubes bent at 30, 45, and even 90 degrees. It was a defiant, absurd attempt to cheat ballistics to save human lives. Forcing a supersonic piece of lead to turn a corner is a mechanical nightmare. Only the 30-degree curve offered a glimmer of hope. Peering through a mounted periscope, a hidden shooter could actually strike a human silhouette at 50 to 100 meters. A fleeting triumph. But physics always collects its toll. The violent friction tore the metal apart from the inside. The steel cracked wide open after a mere 300 rounds. Steeper angles brought absolute structural failure. Inside the 90-degree bend, The extreme pressure instantly obliterated the ammunition. The bullets shattered inside the tight curve. The heavy attachment spat out a chaotic cloud of jagged shrapnel, turning the assault rifle into a blind, unpredictable shotgun. Aiming past 2 meters became impossible. While some engineers twisted barrels, a secret laboratory forged a different path. They built a machine to pierce the absolute dark. Could one device reverse the tide of war in the spring of 1945? 300 kits would soon dissolve into the chaos of defeat. A solitary soldier stepped into the pitch-black ruins. He bent forward under the gear. He carried a wooden box on his back. It held a 13-kilogram battery. Thick, rigid cables crawled from his shoulders and crossed his chest. They locked directly into a heavy optic on his assault rifle. The infrared spotlight illuminated targets at distances from 70 to 200 meters. Designers designated the system Zielgerät 1229 Vampire. The soldier pressed his eye against the cold rubber eye cup. The dead night vanished. An eerie greenish glow flooded the glass. Human silhouettes ignited in the dark. He saw everything. The enemy saw nothing. It was a surreal portrait of a collapsing world. Starving infantrymen dragged the electronics of tomorrow through the rubble of falling cities. This technology defied its own era. Decades would pass before heavy infrared complexes became a mass combat standard for American troops during the Vietnam War. But here, the engineering miracle brought only agony. The operator moved entirely blind outside the narrow green scope. The bulky emitter ruined the balance of the weapon. Every step in the ruins drained their final strength. Yet the high command demanded salvation. Factories rushed the final batches out their doors as the front lines collapsed. Workers assembled exactly 300 units and shipped them straight to frontline night combat squads. Futuristic night scopes looked like magic, but the real terror waited on the beaches of Normandy. During the D-Day landings, advancing Allies collided with the raw, naked version of the new weapon. A deafening, continuous crackle tore through the hedgerows. Searing bursts of German fire swallowed the battlefield. They effortlessly drowned out the rare, lonely pops of American rifles. Infantrymen froze. Pure psychological shock. Why did the American .30 carbine fail to deliver a worthy answer? It behaved like a weak pistol round, not true rifle ammunition. The classic arsenals of the victors suddenly felt obsolete. An American soldier crouched in the dirt. He picked up the strange trophy. He eyed the heavy, aggressively curved magazine with deep suspicion. He wiped off the mud. He slammed the bolt. He joined the fight. The Reich pushed its dying factories to the edge. 400,000 assault rifles, a colossal figure, proving absolutely powerless to prevent the collapse of the Reich. That sheer volume could fully arm a small European country, but for the bleeding, violently overstretched Wehrmacht, it remained a mere drop in the ocean. German squads received the ultimate weapon. Too late. The victors simply took the advantage. Allied infantrymen slung the captured rifles over their shoulders and fired them back at the enemy until the trophy magazines ran dry. To decode the lethal fire of those Normandy trophies, the Soviets claimed the ultimate prize. They took the creator himself. Hugo Schmeisser became an intellectual captive of a victorious empire. The curved magazine and thin stamped steel of the resulting AK-47 were merely an external mask. They hid a completely different mechanism beneath. Schmeisser sat at a wooden drafting table in the closed city of Izhevsk. Armed guards flanked the heavy doors. Soviet engineers scrutinized his every pencil stroke. For 6 relentless years, the captured genius worked in forced exile. He transplanted the German philosophy of rapid metal stamping into hostile soil. This operation was Moscow's direct answer to the American Operation Paperclip, a ruthless state-sponsored hunt for the surviving brains of the Third Reich. On the cold test stands, the raw concept evolved. A dull metallic clank echoed across the firing range. The heavy parts of the long-stroke gas piston slammed flawlessly into battery. The Soviets refused to blindly clone the captured Sturmgewehr. They extracted its soul. The local engineers entirely reinvented the locking mechanics, the trigger group, and the safety system. It was a forced symbiosis of two monumental engineering schools. The German blueprint for mass-produced assault fire collided with Soviet demands for indestructible simplicity. Mikhail Kalashnikov absorbed the lessons of the fallen enemy to build his own immortal legend. But the young Soviet designer denied the German pedigree. He credited the American Garand. While the captive Schmeisser sketched blueprints under Soviet guard, local engineers faced a brutal truth. Their existing rifles were hopelessly obsolete. Examining captured German hardware triggered a manic race. The army desperately needed a new foundation for infantry combat. They solved the fundamental problem by engineering their own intermediate ammunition. The 7.62 by 39 mm cartridge, short, brutal, balanced. Adapting the philosophy of a foreign trophy, the Soviets unleashed a historical monster. This specific ammunition would eventually claim more human lives than both world wars combined. A new cartridge demanded a new host. Designers feverishly built weapons around this deadly pulse. First came the STG-44 semi-automatic carbine, a cautious transitional step. But the Army craved fully automatic supremacy. The frantic development cycle shattered all previous design constraints. The ultimate weapon finally left the drawing board. The AK-47 officially entered the world in 1947. The new Soviet rifle defined the post-war era. But the original German machine did not vanish after the capitulation. Where do Middle Eastern rebels get ammunition for a half-century-old rifle? The answer is monstrous logistics. The dying empire stamped out cartridges night and day. Trains carried endless wooden crates to the front. Depots overflowed. This frantic mechanical flood gave the gun a sinister immortality. Decades passed. The 2000s arrived. The Syrian civil war erupted. Look closely at the combat footage. Tarnished metal. Sand ingrained deep into the steel of a 70-year-old German assault rifle. A local fighter raises the heavy weapon. He pulls the trigger. The bolt cycles flawlessly. The machine does not care that its nation died long ago. It only knows how to kill. A weapon whose creators have lain in graves for over half a century continues to fire in the Syrian sands. Its bloody survival comes down to one absolute calculation. In just 3 years of war, German factories produced 820 million.